they have a good environment, but they
Yeah,
didn't make a good sound with a good
yeah.
quality.
It's so difficult to talk about those things because something like good sound it's subjective after all, to a certain degree. To other degree, it's measurable. It's pretty complex to talk about that in an accurate way, in a way, because yeah, ultimately it comes down to subjectivity, but then also you can actually, since it's all physics and shit, you can actually prove some things and go a little bit more scientific about it. But yeah, okay, so we have speakers, we have sound card, and what else?
First is acoustic, bro. In my,
Versus acoustic. Yeah, but okay. I said what I had to say
but
about it. All right. So like if you finish, I can do it. I can start
sure.
my line and
Yes,
my
yes,
explanation
yes. We come
if you
back
want.
and talk more.
So, for example, yeah, you come back afterwards. So I think that a good realistic. Let's start from a setup that would have been good for when I was starting. So as I said, like not coming from a rich family who will just stuff your ass with fucking shit. But let's say I don't have a lot of money. I want to start music production. What are the really crucial things? The crucial things are, first of all, you need to have a PC. It's like, or you're going full hardware, but that exists still. I know people who do that, who refuse to use DAWs, who refuse to use anything, and it's kind of amazing that people are out there doing that. But um, yeah, you need a PC. Sound card we talked already about. Alfie said speakers. I say headphones. So I say headphones not because headphones are better necessarily. Both have like advantages and disadvantages. I say headphones because it's more in your reach. So let's say you're on a tight budget. You just spent 800 euro for a laptop, let's say, or a computer. You have like 400 euro left for your sound card and for the rest of the stuff. So, and that's extremely tight budget. I know that, but in this case, I would recommend go with the DT990 as I always recommend because they're like the studio reference entry level headphones on our planet that are doing the job just fine. Like as accurate as needed for a beginner. Absolutely, you don't need more expensive headphones if you're just starting out. So I would recommend them something like that. If they can afford it, then I would recommend them entry level speakers. So what are entry level speakers? Entry level speakers range from basically starting from 300 a pair, 300 euro a pair, going up to maybe 5, 6, 700 euro max a pair. Yeah, exactly. That's true. They are so cheap today. I was like thinking, is that really true? Can you get them so cheap? But yes, you can get tiny speakers like 3 inches or something like that for 300 euros. You can get a pair. I wouldn't recommend that. I would recommend going for 5-inch monitors to start out your music
Exactly,
production journey
exactly.
because the 3-inch 3-inch tells me something. The speakers will start probably above 60 hertz, maybe even higher than that. So you are not getting anything of the sub frequencies to hear
Exactly.
anything of that. Yeah. But it's still better to have an HS3 or a Rocket 3. I'm not even sure if that fucking exists, but a Rocket 3, Rocket is from KRK.
Hmm.
Um, then this is better than no speaker at all for sure.
Yeah.
But I would probably tell, if I would have a student, I would tell them, look, start out with the headphones. They're at first more reliable. You're gonna anyway not build yourself a studio with acoustics because people don't do that, Alfie. Like people unfortunately don't do that. Like it would be great, but I would say most people don't do that, except if they're fucking like very knowledgeable and rich. Basically, I don't know a lot of beginners who immediately start out with the acoustics right away. It took me years.
But it's
First,
not
I had.
expensive in this case. You can buy.
It is not. It is not.
Yeah, and
It's not.
you
It's
don't
not
need to be
expensive.
rich. You just need to buy
No,
something
but
and
it's also not in your purview. It's not
yeah.
in your
You
purview.
don't
That's
believe that
yeah.
this is a very important stuff in this
Yes.
case.
Let's say like you're rich. most likely what you are going to do, let's say your father is a millionaire and he's stuffing you, okay? You're like, I'm going to buy myself the Dyne Audio Air 12 or something like that, something perverted, like really expensive, high-end studio speakers, and I'm going to be good, but you're not going to be good. You don't know jack shit about music production, and your room is going to sound horrible, and like, can't buy yourself skill. Basically, that's the thing with music production. We can't really cheat that much. So my answer would be PC headphones. Then you need to have a DAW. A DAW, fortunately, not necessarily paid. You can buy it if you want to. If you want to go for one of the paid ones have advantages, of course. In some cases, like Ableton, like Cubase, they are really sophisticated DAWs that are very successful and therefore also had the advantage of having more money to put in R&D than the smaller players like Sonar, for example. Actually, probably Cubase is smaller than Sonar. I always have this weird twist in my brain that I am using Cubase, so I think Cubase is the greatest and most successful DAW on the planet, but it's not. There is no official data about the market share of DAWs, unfortunately. There's only unofficial data, so that is like skewed widely. If you check in the internet, do more people use Cubase or do more people use Ableton, you're going to get widely different answers to that question. Because they don't put out the official numbers, I think, or I don't know why there are so conflicting messages out there, but it is like that if you look it up. I found at least 3 different pies, like pie charts, where in one Cubase is a third, in one Cubase is 10%, for example, and yeah. So a DAW is very important, but DAW, fortunately, you can skimp on buying a paid DAW if you are really on a tight budget. Then you can just go with Sonar. Sonar is a really, really great DAW. It's free of charge, and I think there are tons of other DAWs. Then there's the possibility to use test version of DAWs, like Cubase, for example, offers a test version. I'm sure Ableton does as well. So you can do that to have that started. I do not recommend to start with what was it called? EJ?
Yeah, Dance EJ.
Dance EJ or something like that, to
Oh
be
my
honest with you,
God.
because you're basically just wasting your time with something like that. So just go with something
Sure.
that is workable, like Cakewalk Sonar. Like, it's free, it's good, better than most other DAWs, or not most other DAWs, a lot of other DAWs.
And that's free, bro.
And it's free. And then, okay, what else do you need to start out? We talked about acoustics, we talked about speakers, we talked about interfaces.
For the start,
I think the
really, you
interface
don't need
for
anything else, just a
yeah,
PC or laptop. At the very, very first, you can
yes. Yeah, but
make
then
your
also,
own
okay,
music.
then what kind of PC and what kind of laptop could be interesting to talk about that, right? So like I get like, yeah, what PC, what would you reckon is the minimum in 2021 for starting production? The thing is with music production is that requirements vary dramatically. There is
Yeah.
going to be one producer who's using 50 fucking VSTs, like really complex ones, and it's gonna hammer his processor. And then there's another guy who's mostly using hardware, for example, and he's gonna have nothing on his processor. And then there's one guy who's maximum using 16 channel, and then there's another guy who uses fucking 500 channels for some reason. Nobody knows why, but he's using 500 channels. People like that exist, so it would be not even the easiest to say. But what do you think is the minimum entry level? What would you recommend to somebody who says, like on a rudimentary level? Let's get not into deep, but just from like RAM, hard drive, those kind of aspects.
Mm, at least Core i5, I think, with
I think that's such it's an outdated way of talking, because that was from the time when Intel was basically the only viable chance. But okay, I get you. Yeah.
this
So
is the
medium, Ryzen
minimum.
5,
This is
Ryzen
the
5,
minimum stuff.
Yeah. But nowadays we're in a different time, 2021. So actually, Ryzen and AMD is a relevant thing today. So Ryzen 5 or i5 basically, right? So like medium
I
kind of.
really prefer to Core i7,
But Jen,
but if you don't have
why you
enough
prefer
budget,
Core?
you can go for
Yeah.
Core i5 in this case. At least,
And what generation?
uh, what
Because that's
generation?
like it's a very loose information. If you're saying i5, somebody will go to eBay, look for an i5, going to buy a fucking 10-year-old first generation i5, and he's gonna come home and cry.
Yeah.
So
You mean the cash,
we're
yeah?
talking about current generation basically, or what? Basically.
Current generation is really good in this case. Better than the old
Yes,
one for
current
sure.
generation. Well, the current generation Ryzen 5 easily beats most like 2-3 generation old i7s. So this is really an important thing if you're talking about if we are talking about PCs. It's like always this generational thing. I think you need a bunch of hard drive space, the much as you can afford, an absolute bare minimum 500 GB. I think you need as much as basically anything as much as you can. That's stupid to say it every time, but we're talking about the minimum. So absolute bare minimum survival would be 8 GB. It's not good, but you would be absolutely have no problem at all to do music production as a beginner,
As a
because
beginner.
you will not. Yeah, as a beginner, yeah. And RAM is one of the things that are quite easily upgradable in most instances. Not necessarily if you have a laptop, but even most laptops nowadays have swappable RAM. So that would be like a thing that you could save some bucks on if you're on a budget, for sure. Then furthermore, okay, we have hard drive, we have the processor. Processor is really important, of course, for anything that you're doing on the PC work-wise. You want to have a strong processor. I agree. Ryzen 5 or i5 last gen, so 10th or 11th gen i7 or i5 or third gen Zen processor or second gen Zen processor. If you're like more than 5, then you're good for sure. The better the processor, the more future proof you will be. So like an i5 will last you maybe a year or 2 years less in the end, to your satisfaction. You know what I mean? You're going to spend a little bit less, but you're going to have to buy a new laptop a little bit sooner in that case, most likely.
Yeah.
So that's very important. Then headphones, speakers, sound card. Me and Alfie and me, we have a little bit different approach to when it comes to sound cards. I think because he says sound card is very important to have a good one, and I would say in the case of a beginner, everything is better than the shit that is in your laptop. So even if you buy, that's for obviously you agree also on that, but then I don't think that you have to buy something more expensive than 300 euro as a beginner at all.
No,
Not at all.
no, no,
Yeah.
no, at all.
So
I really start with a really shitty sound card, but it was actually better than nothing because I have
exactly.
something to rely on.
Yeah. Exactly. So I was actually my first sound card was this weird. So it was from Steinberg, like this little plastic thingy, like really small plastic thingy, and horrible sound card, but it did the most basic function of taking a digital signal and transforming it to a sober analog signal. It does that pretty good. So, like, people underestimate how far we are technologically. If you're buying a sound card today, an entry-level sound card, most likely it has a decent DAC inside. We're not talking about world-class DAC or something like that, but very decent if you're spending 200 euros. So the easiest way to start, really, like if you break it down to the most necessities, So the biggest necessity, it would be just get headphones and get a computer, basically, and get a sound card. Those are the three things. You can get that for less than €1,000, basically. You can get that also for a lot less, of course, but let's stay realistic. You know, you don't want to make yourself suffer with some like 10-year-old machine to start out your career as a music producer or your hobby. It doesn't matter what you want to do, but you're going to spend a lot of time in front of that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that is actually like, do you have anything more to say about the thing? Do you want to go deeper into any part?
Any part? No, for the beginner, I think this is the best start that everyone can really
Yeah.
count on it and start with that.